It is a wild Wednesday. Jeff Dubay show, sans Jeff Dubay. He is taking some personal time. And Tony Dean is out fighting crime on the streets. So I am here with Brad Ratkin filling in. He is a former writer with Hockey Buzz. And Patrick, as always, is filling in. He's going to be chiming in here and there. But we're going to try to keep the show moving because, as they say, the show must go on. So at Bennett's Chop and Rail House, Joe's going to join us as well for a little bit to talk some Wild, but not a lot of positives to talk about considering the week that was, and we can break that down little by little. So, Brad, I'm going to turn it over. What's your take on the three games? I know there's not a lot of positives that we can lean on, but what did you see from the Wild since the start of round two?
Well, it's pretty tough. I mean, going down 3-0 to the Hawks. It's been done, 4 times in NHL history, coming back from a 3-0 deficit, and it just doesn't look good, does it?
Nope. And yeah, we talked about before the show that the last time it was done, 4 times is in NHL history, but the last one was last year where the Kings took over the Sharks in the quarterfinals and then went on to win the Cup. But as it looks, we're not the Kings, and Chicago's not the Sharks. So this might be a tough and tall order.
Right now, the only question for me is whether or not they get swept. I mean, are the Wild players so defeated already that they just come out and lay an egg tomorrow and just get on with their summer, or do they get a win, force it back to Chicago, and pray for a miracle? And
that's what I mean in the game last night. And we're going to go back and probably break down games 1 and 2. But in the game last night, they really came out firing. I mean, they came back on the home ice. It was electric. They brought in some additional animation and things, and they really kind of brought back some excitement, and they came out firing. But that only lasted about the first 5 minutes, and then I think it was kind of like what we did with the Blues, is they weathered the storm and then went back to playing their game, and we kind of lost out. We're going to get joined here by Joe Bennett sitting down with us, and he's going to give us his take as well. Joe, what do you think of the second round so far?
God, Scotty, I don't know. The disappointment is all I can think. It's just not sure what happened from the time they beat St. Louis to the time, besides the second period of the first game. That reminded me a lot of St. Louis again, where, they came back, obviously down 3-0. It's like, how do you even come back from that? They did it. That was unbelievable. And then they just start, hitting everybody. It started looking good, and I'm thinking, this is awesome. But that game, we just didn't have the goaltending, in my opinion.
The goaltending, I think, was a little shaky, and I wonder if it had to do with the time that we had off. I mean, in the lengthy time that we had between that Sunday win, and it had to go all the way to Friday before we played again. I know Chicago was doing the same thing, but they were at home waiting for us. Yeah. They've been here before. Yeah. They've seen it the past 2 years. We're a familiar face. But do you think with the Wild, they lost that momentum and that kind of, the fire that was, could have been coming off of round 1 if it would have been only a few days?
I don't disagree with you. Because they were playing kind of every other day there. They were making things happen. And against St. Louis, and obviously won that series in 6, which no one predicted that. They thought maybe it'd go 7 at the most. But they're a team. They've always bounced back after a loss. They haven't done that this series. We haven't seen that where it's been like, oh my God, these guys are really, Dubnyk is just stopping everything and he's standing on his head. And after that second game, I was convinced they figured him out. I figured because he let 2 goals went right underneath his arms, both that sniper by Sharp and then by Kane. One was on the right, one was on the left. And then yesterday's goal, where did Kane go?
Well, I mean, it appeared it went through the wickets to me. I mean,
he went right through the 5-hole, low on the ice.
Yeah. So he pulled almost like an Allen goal.
Yeah.
I mean, that was like a carbon copy of the Fontaine on Allen type of goal.
He was like, okay, because you could see that Dubnyk was pulling his arms up, thinking that I'm going to drop these because he's going to go there, and he just slid it along the ice. And that was just a mind game. And that's how good Kane is too. You got to give him his credit for. I think that's exactly what he wanted to do with it, and he got the goal out of it.
Well, I'm sure they sit back and they watch film. And,
nonstop.
it's kind of what do the Wild do, considering that they had the back and forth goalie controversy in the first round with Crawford and then Darling. I mean, Crawford gets beat up, he gets yanked in the first game. Then Darling comes in, plays so well. Doesn't start the second game, which I think was a mistake, but it clearly worked out for him. But they, I think they were trying to figure out how they could get after Crawford, and they didn't play the right game, and they never had a chance to.
Yeah, and and now all of a sudden against us, of course, just like the 3 years prior, he's standing on his head.
I mean, and I don't think he's getting a whole lot of support in front of him either. I mean, I think there's the defenseman. I mean, I don't know what your take is, but I've been watching. I mean, growing up playing defense, like I can see how the defensemen are playing, and it's, I mean, Suter losing the board battle, and then getting it taken away, from Hossa, and then going down to scoring, and then not keeping track of Kane. So you get the offsides. It should have been an offsides, but nobody touched the puck, and then somebody floats almost a 2-line pass to Kane for a goal. I mean, that kind of stuff where you're not keeping track of the suck hole that's hopping behind you. I mean, that's fundamental defense, and they're just not playing the right way.
Well, and was it game one when Scandella was on the wrong side, got turned around, then, boom, that's a goal. So, we haven't played the defense, I think, like we played against St. Louis, but, these guys are big boys, and they got to step it up. And tomorrow we got to step it up for sure.
Well, I think the Hawks are faster than St. Louis. They're faster, more skilled. They're just bringing a different level. I mean, they have that lever that they can push for postseason and just go harder and faster than you saw in the regular season. Yeah. I don't think they give a shit during the regular season.
And I kind of wondered what the Wild were going to do, because it's a great point about all the publicity about the Blues going to be the heavy bodies, and they're going to be smashing us and taking us off our game, and we didn't play that. We played the speed game, and that's how we dominated them. And then I heard, going into the Hawks series, consider they have speed, are we going to play the physical game and try to get them, do almost a reverse and try to get them off the speed game by being bigger and maybe trying to slow them down, which surprised me that we wouldn't have gone and tried to match them with speed with the likes of Haula, Schrader, those type of guys, but instead kind of went with the beefier back end to begin the series.
Well, what happened to the Jacques Lemaire theory of playing trap hockey? It's playoffs. Win however you can win, and they have the speed to counterattack. Lemaire didn't have the speed to counterattack when he had these guys in 03, and he did it. He did it with less. I mean, I'm just curious why maybe Yeo didn't try to do that to the Hawks. The Hawks are clearly a better team.
Well, and after they went up 1-0 last night, I mean, they played the clog game. I mean, it was a slow, unexciting game after they went up 1-0, and we couldn't get anything going. We couldn't have any sort of possession game. We had no breaking into the zone. It went back and defaulted back to the old dump and chase, that we saw before earlier in the year that wasn't working. And it's unfortunate that the Wild are almost reverting back to like old bad habits, when they're not having success. And you hear the player audio bits. It's like, we got to stick with our game. We got to play our game. But they're not. And it's, you can talk about it, but when you don't do it, that's where, now we're down 3-0.
Let me ask you this question, though, on Haula in Game 2. So, how did you think he did?
I mean, Haula has some reason lost it. I don't know what happened from last season playoffs.
Well, I was listening to, I don't know, that must have been the NHL channel where they were talking about in the World Championships last year, he got a concussion. And then they were wondering if he got maybe early on this year, he took a pretty big hit at one point in time. Do you think that's been a part of it, that maybe they just aren't saying anything about?
Maybe he's a little off. I mean, I would think that the Wild have been notorious for protecting their players,
right,
and not playing them, if they don't need to. And I think we have such a deep lineup. I don't think that they would have played him if there is a risk, because I think he has shown that he is an attribute that they would not gamble a short term for, or gamble the long term for a short term victory, especially with somebody who has the potential to be a talented center, a potential talented third line center. I don't think so. Especially when you have Carter that could play up the middle. I don't think so.
I think with Yeo, clearly this year Halla's been in the doghouse, right?
Absolutely.
Zucker was in that same doghouse a couple years ago, if you remember. And why? He wasn't being defensively responsible. He was just going forward, not coming back ever.
Right.
And so I wonder if that has something to do with why Yo's not playing Halla, is that Halla isn't defensively responsible. And then they look at all the fancy stats, and maybe his stats are just really down compared to other guys.
Well, I remember in the beginning of part of the year, when he pulled him, he said it was a conditioning thing.
I did hear that he came in a little chubby and a little out of shape, and really kind of from the get, almost like a Setaguchi type thing. He came in and he wasn't prepared. He didn't do enough in the offseason, and that could go back to if there was some truth to the concussion thing.
Right.
I don't know if that's the case, but defensively, last year in the playoffs, he was the defensive gem. He was the guy that they put right on McKinnon to make sure McKinnon couldn't do anything. Right. So, I mean, clearly he has the defensive attributes to be a third-line center and to take on players like that, and top players from other teams. I don't know what he did coming into, to this year to put him, really off the depth chart. Not even to the bottom, like off the depth chart.
Yeah, hasn't even got in. I mean, besides that game, they didn't really even consider him. It seemed like
they did play him in the St. Louis series, I think once, and I think that was basically it. And then he got pulled back out.
Oh.
I mean, and so it was something that he has not had much exposure at all. But that probably goes back to the fact that Brodziak has been playing well. I mean, or had been playing well defensively, and I'm a huge Brodziak basher part of the year, just because he was snake bit. He couldn't hit the broadside of the barn with the puck.
Yeah.
And then he turns things around mid-year and becomes like just a defensive just power.
Yeah.
I mean, and great penalty killer and wonderful the way he's playing his game. And then you have Carter, who got injured, and Carter showed in the beginning of the season how great he could play. So you really don't have a lot of room for Haula if he's not playing to the level that could take over those two.
Right.
I think the room for Haula is next year. Once they start dropping some guys off the roster, they're saving Haula. They're not playing him to save him for next year, but they're going to keep him next season, I think. And then he's going to get a spot in the lineup, or at least a shot at getting in the lineup and playing regular minutes and see if he can regain that form. Now, who knows? Maybe it's a sophomore slump or something like that.
And that's a good point to find out what they're going to do. I mean, you have some notes here in front that we talked about before the show, but what they're going to do next year as far as players go, and not to get ahead of ourselves that we still have a game tomorrow night and everything, but I mean, if you're being rational and logical and realistic, I mean the likelihood of turning this around is it would be one for the books.
2% chance.
Yeah,
it's okay to talk about next year, because it's either going to happen tomorrow night that we're going to start talking like this, or it's going to happen in Game 5, or it's going to happen in June. Sooner or later. Yeah, looking forward is going to happen for this team and its fan base and the management. I'm sure the management is already looking at that.
They got it slated out, and I think there's a couple components that I think affect this. Is Haula clearly is a restricted free agent. They're going to keep him around. It just depends if it's going to be a one-way deal or a two-way deal. Considering how his last year has gone, do you think he'd have to go with a two-way, maybe a two-way on the first year and a one-way on the second, kind of a thing?
I think it would do him some good to go back to Iowa. Like when Zucker went down to Iowa, I was so against that, because he was the only guy that scored the first time that we played the Blackhawks in the playoffs. But man, when he came out of Iowa, he was on fire.
The same thing with Dumba. I mean, Dumba, they had that great. Russo wrote the great article about Dumba's family when they were here. About how they were Calgary season ticket holders and all that, and basically how he was so bent out of shape and defeated when they sent him down. And it was the best thing for him, because he got more ice time. He got, wasn't like constantly in the spotlight and had the pressure on him. He was able to kind of figure out, the transfer game from, juniors to even like the AHL, and how he wants to play in the NHL. And that clearly has paid dividends, because while he still has hiccups, he is a great defenseman as far as what he brings to the table with his offensive upside.
Yeah. I'm still bitter about Kemper being on a one-way. He could have benefited so much this year from going down.
Well, we went into that earlier this year. I mean, there's a whole lengthy conversation about that. It all stems from Harding. I mean, Harding is the absolute cause of multiple bad deals as far as goaltenders go. I mean, he was the cause of having to sign Backstrom because of the MS. And I don't want to belabor the point of speculation of whether he knew or not when he signed his deal. Now you fast forward. we were kind of in negotiations. He was threatening the KHL, whatever, and then Harding kicks the wall or whatever the altercation is with Veilleux or whoever it was, and now he's out. So then all of a sudden, Kemper's agent's like, well, now we got leverage. So you tell him that you want this, and that's going to be it, because they have nothing anymore.
Could have been the worst thing for Kemper's career.
Absolutely, and I think that he says it's not a wasted year, and maybe he's going to be able to settle in and be the backup, to Dubnyk, because anybody who has any hockey sense knows we're going to sign him. It just is a matter for how much and how long.
Right, that's got to be the number one priority. Period.
Yeah.
Is they got to get Dubnyk, they got to figure out what the terms are going to be, and get him signed. If you're another team that's out there that needs goaltending, and he's an unrestricted free agent, am I right?
He's yeah, absolutely.
He's the number one UFA.
Right. So
Yeah.
teams are going to be coming after him like crazy.
Yeah, I think he has enough self-awareness to realize that he spent so much time with different teams over the past 18 months, and he found a nice place here. I mean, he has teammates that that took him in, and with Parise, letting him live in that Edina house because they didn't want to live in the hotel with the baby and all that stuff. And he found a defensive-minded team that isn't going to let him get shelled. They're going to protect him when they play well and they play the system. But is he going to take a risk to get more money to go to some other place? I mean, I don't know. I mean,
I think he might. It's a business.
Well,
bottom line, it's a business.
That's exactly right. Money is everything in so much of it nowadays, especially in pro sports. It's not really about that. It's about where am I going to get paid, because no matter what, I'm going to get that money, and that's what I want.
And speaking of business, hockey is a business, but also Bennett's Chop and Rail is
Whoa,
a business here.
Stop it.
And we're all having fun here on the podcast. We love doing the Wild Show, but we're here for one reason. We're here to promote Bennett's Chop and Rail. We're here to
Appreciate
promote
that.
Joe Bennett, and
No, Bennett's. Joe Bennett's big enough.
Joe Bennett's on the side, but
Mostly
we
you're
Chubby.
going to upset Megan.
Yeah,
you.
exactly.
Yeah, thank you.
Speaking for Tony and Scott and Jeff
on.
and everyone at the network here,
You bet.
we love being here and we love having the show here. But the overall goal of the show is to promote Bennett. So why don't you just take a couple minutes, Joe, and tell us what's going on at Bennett's?
Tomorrow night we're gonna, we hope it's not our last shuttle that we have to the Wild, and nothing would make us happier to take this thing to 7. That would continue to build excitement. Tomorrow's an 8:30 game, so call in, make a reservation. We've got our Wild special, which is our 10-ounce sirloin, caramelized onions, some unbelievable mushrooms on there. Great deal, $19, and that's just part of the deal. Happy hours going on early that night. We also have we got a couple of jersey giveaways. And you can sign up here or on the website. I believe it's through Facebook, through Living Social, if I'm right.
Yeah, the contest giveaway, you can enter here live at Bennett's
Nice.
here when we're here from 5:30 to 6:30.
Right on.
And you can also enter by liking Bennett's on Facebook. That's what we're trying to get our fans. If you can support us, support Wild Wednesdays, and more importantly, support Bennett's. Give them a like on Facebook. Hear about their specials. I had the Big Ben before the show started today. Unbelievable.
Yeah, isn't that a great burger? Also, Twitter. If we can get more likes on Twitter, we're just kind of starting with that. So we're trying to build our Twitter so we can give out some great promotions through that, and also some giveaways through our Twitter account, which is great.
What do we follow on Twitter? Just Bennett's Chop and Rail on Twitter?
Actually, it's Bennett's Chop MN. That's our Twitter account, and then our Facebook is right up there too. I'm getting old, so it's Bennett's Chop and Rail, I think, on Facebook. So follow us and get some good deals out of there. Especially those jerseys are nice.
Yeah, they're nice. Next week, Scott will.
Yeah, next week we'll give those away. We got a white roadie, and we got the red home jersey. So.
I got it. I got
Actually,
somebody for the red one.
The red one is given away.
we got
we
one of
we
my
have our winner.
She drew
Yeah.
and was a big winner. Plus, she's the only one that can fit into it. Which is even better.
By default, I like it.
By default, no, just kidding.
And I've never been here, and I think this place is great. I'm coming back, and I'm eating
Awesome.
and drinking. What about Mother's Day? I haven't got anything worked out yet. Are you guys
You know
small or
what?
not?
That is thank you for bringing that up. Mother's Day, we have a brunch buffet. We have seatings at 10 o'clock, noon, and at 2. It's always very, very busy. It's our busiest holiday promotion that we have. We've got, scrambled eggs, bacon, sausage. We do a smoked salmon. We're going to do fennel roasted pork. We have gratin potatoes, a raspberry pecan chicken salad, and then a whole slew of desserts, along with the pasta salad in there also. It's $16.95 for adults, $9.95 for kids. The little ones eat free because we want to make sure that they talk Mom into bringing them here.
Good to hear. I'm bringing my whole crew, and there's 6 kids.
Well, right on. Get on Open Table, because that's what we have for reservations. And you can get that through our website, which is Bennett'sChopandRailhouse.com, and that's AND. And you can make reservations right on Open Table.
Perfect.
Awesome. Yeah, the food here is outstanding. I've known Joe for many, many years. And
Scotty used to work for me.
I probably I was Tenenbaum when I moved to St. Paul. It was fabulous.
Excellent bartender.
I like making the drinks back there and serving the Charlies.
Surprised he didn't drink all the Coors Lights.
He did not, and that was good. At the time, we didn't allow any drinking behind the bar. Since then, we still don't. No, just kidding.
And that hasn't changed.
Yeah, exactly.
Otherwise, I might be back.
Yeah, we'd love to have you. We seriously would.
So, getting back to a couple things, maybe postseason. What do you guys think of Stewart? I mean, Stewart came on real hot on the trade.
Is he going to play though? Is he playing the next game? Is he out?
He had the injury, which some believe is maybe it was a kind of a blessing because he wasn't playing the strongest, that they could pull him out and kind of bring somebody else in. Put Niederreiter. Niederreiter was up on that second. Bring Zucker back up to the second, playing with Koivu. I really liked his game, especially through the Blues series. The players seemed to play larger around him just because he did have that kind of a physical presence. And even through the stretch, I thought he was a great asset and a good kind of a fill player, that something we didn't have.
Right.
That he had the attributes of that. So I was convinced 100% that he'd be back next year. I
still think he will.
I'm kind of doubting a little bit, but I think so. I'm disappointed to see people, disappear in the playoffs. I mean, we don't have to mention, the 5-letter word that has disappeared.
Yeah.
But he is one that it has kind of gone downhill in this series, and I'm not sure why.
Well, let me ask you this: like when you watch him, in the St. Louis series, I didn't think that he was like physical where he pounded guys.
No.
Because there were a lot of his friends on that team. I thought he was going to come into the Chicago series and just, when he had a chance to line a guy up on the boards, I thought he was just going to destroy him. And he hasn't.
Nobody has.
Have you seen? Nobody has. I agree no one has, but if
One
anybody,
exception.
I thought he would.
When Kane got laid out last night, I was at the game. I didn't see who did it, but I saw him laying in the corner, and after he scored that goal and did his little hand gesture to the fans, I was ready for him to go down for the count.
That was Dumba.
So, Dumba hit him?
Yeah.
Oh, that was
Dumba
beautiful.
he's a little spark plug. He's got the lower center of gravity. He's got some meat on him. I think he probably could use a little more, but maybe we'll get him over here and get him some black and blue burger or something.
Exactly. He needs to start eating some of our steaks.
But I mean, on my end last night, I saw like at least 3 times where somebody had the puck and you could have just mowed him over and just like put him through the glass, and they didn't. And I don't get why.
Well, they don't want to get called for a penalty. Spurgeon lays a hip check on somebody, and you get called for tripping, and they go on to score. What a chintzy call in the playoffs. I mean, that's unbelievable that the refs call that, and then, of course, it ends up on Patrick Kane's stick, as per usual, against the Wild, and he buries it.
Yeah. And that was you hit it on the head. That's a Ballard hit. I mean, that was a great hip check where he did the windmill after he hit him. I mean, if you would have caught him with a stick and his leg flew up, yeah, sure, that's a trip. But you got him with your hip. I mean, that's checking. That's what you do.
I was wondering if the refs weren't concerned it might have been a knee-on-knee, because it was Spurgeon that did the hit, right?
Yeah.
He was kind of stretching there, so at first it kind of looked knee-on-knee, but then he got his butt out there, like Ballard does,
But, back to Stewart, you know what? I'm impressed with his passing ability. That when he feathered that one into Niederreiter going in, it must have been game 1, and, I mean, I was hoping he was going to do something at some point, and then he did that, and I went, wow, another one. And sometimes the 5-letter word does that very well, too, at times.
Yeah, he feathered one, I think, to Brodziak.
Yeah.
And, I mean, you get that. I mean, but even beyond the passing, I mean, he's shown that he has some speed for
Yeah.
a big guy.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, he has a weird body shape, but he has some speed, and he did that nifty goal in the regular season on, I believe it was on Allen, where he went 5-hole. And, he kind of like did a move and got him to open up the wickets, and he, put it right in there. And I think a lot of people are like, whoa, who's this guy? Like,
Were you kind of hoping he was going to be an irritant?
I mean, I don't.
When we got him?
I never. You don't hope for like an Ott. I mean, we have Cook, and Cook is not like an Ott. I mean,
Right.
Ott was like petting Jason
Right,
Zucker's
right,
head and like
right.
trying to get inside the Wild, and they were laughing at him, and it was effective. But then we lost that game 4, and then people were like, well, wait a minute, because we're talking about it, is it effective? And there was kind of some back and forth talk about that. But at the game, there was a gal sitting on the glass in front of me, and I, like, no less than 6 times, he'd just skate by and stare at her. She did look like a mini Kardashian, but,
Right.
I mean, he just would,
Nice.
he just eyeball her right through the glass, and he wouldn't smile, he just would, like, creepy stare at her.
Excellent.
And it was like he was almost trying to play that agitator role with the fans. I mean, he saw the signs that were up there. I'm sure
yeah.
that he can't miss them, but I mean, you get a player like that you hate so much that people don't even talk about Backus. I mean,
Right.
that's pretty impressive for
Yeah.
somebody. I mean, somebody to take away everything, all the hate that Minnesota has for David Backus. Somebody who went on an article and like basically talked shit about Minnesota. I mean, it was like, I don't care about any of you people. Like, whatever. It's like,
Right. I'm from there. I
yeah,
still don't care.
Yeah,
Remember that game where Backus was chirping Kemper from the bench, and Kemper was on the ice playing in the game, and he's yelling at him during the game?
Yeah.
It must have been last season. But Backus didn't show up. There was no reason to talk about David Backus.
No.
Ott at least showed up.
Ott showed up and he had a couple moves, and I mean, Oshie didn't show up either, and that was
No.
a big controversy about after the season was over. What's going to happen? Hitchcock is not under contract. Is he going to come back? Or do they have to dismantle your core? Do you have to kind of jettison some pieces that maybe aren't fitting what you need to do in order to to build something new? You have the the Tarasenkos, and you have the Yaskins, and you have some other younger guys that can maybe pick up some of the slack left behind by if an Oshie leaves or somebody. But both of them are pretty close to be up on their deals, so I don't know what they're going to do.
It's interesting, when Hitchcock was hired by the Blues, the Wild, as you remember, had first shot at him. They could have hired him instead of Yo.
I think they actually hired. Didn't they hire
Richards?
Richards
At one of those hirings, they had a crack at Laviolette, they had a crack at Hitchcock, but the team wasn't there yet. We were still a young team building, and I think Yo's great for the younger guys, and he's got rapport even with the veterans. Maybe too much with the veterans, kind of favoring them to perhaps his own fault.
power play.
But
Yeah.
I wonder if at some point management says Yo is not the guy that can coach a veteran team to the Stanley Cup. He can get them to the playoffs, backs against the wall, get them coming out, playing well, but can he get them over the hump? Can he get them past Chicago? Because let's face it, the way that the NHL is lined up now, we're going to be seeing Chicago year in and year out, provided we're in the playoffs.
I'm actually I might correct you on that, because you looked at the at what's happening next year with us, and we only have a few people that are up on contract. They have a whole lot more.
Yeah,
a whole lot more and a whole lot less money.
Yeah,
So they're going to have to.
especially
They're going to have
next year
to.
they got to pay the 2 boys.
They're going to have to figure out what because somebody at work actually talked to me about it, and they're like, "Did you see what they have up on contract
Yeah.
next year, and all the unrestricted free agents that they're going to have to sign?"
Well, Sharp's going to be gone. Saad's going to come in and take his place. But who's doing stuff for the Blackhawks in this series? The third and fourth liners or the top 2 lines, the big boys?
Yeah.
The big boys are doing everything.
Yeah, no,
Goaltending.
I mean, I pulled up all the people who scored, in this entire series, and it is. I mean, you go right down the line, and you got Saad, Kane, the Teravainen. I mean, the new kid.
Hey, how good is that kid going to be? Though? He's out there. When he's out there, I actually have times going, what's Kane doing with the puck on right now? Doesn't he steps
He
like
reminds you
him?
of him, yep.
He moves like him. He's got the stick like him.
And they figured out some sort of like drop behind play that they've continued to use,
Yeah.
where they cut across and then they drop it and the other guy's coming in. They use it over and over and over again to kind of clear a lane for the shot, and it's effective because these guys must have just practiced it and mastered it. And he's impressed, but beyond that, you got Taves scoring. You got, Kane scoring again last night. I mean,
Hossa.
you got Sharp. I mean, Sharp had scored. Kane had a couple in game 2. Hossa has not scored yet.
I thought he potted one in game 1 or 2.
I didn't have him on. I pulled up the box scores from the first 3 games, and I did not have Hossa on the sheet.
Did you see today that Facebook or whatever it was, Kane gave Hossa the belt? Their big deal after the game is like New York gives them the hat and something else, and Chicago
they got like the fedora in New
right,
York.
No, they got in Chicago they got the World Championship Wrestling belt, and he gave, instead of giving it to Crawford, which wouldn't you? That would have been the first guy went over to.
Yeah, you think
he gave it to Hossa?
It's a strange move.
But
and
why?
I didn't notice him that much last night.
I didn't either.
He was not. I mean, they played that kind of claw game, and it was nothing. It was nothing fancy. It was nothing stylish. And the only highlight is they got the puck through the open pads, and that was basically it.
I wonder if it was a defensive thing that Hossa shut somebody down, which that's not what you think of Hossa for.
No.
He's a goal scorer.
Or what about if Quenneville, gets the cane and says, "We got to spark Hossa, give
right,
him the belt."
Exactly, right. That could
give
be
him some
too.
confidence.
Yeah.
It absolutely could.
And then do you when you think about that, Quenneville, are we being out-coached at this point?
Totally.
I think
You
totally.
think so?
And I think if to the point of Yo, I mean, Yo has done a great job, and people were calling for his head now 2 seasons in a row.
Yeah.
And he's turned it around. I mean, you're not alone. I mean, a lot of people were. Tony was sitting right there, and he was basically, he'll deny it, but he was basically he's like, the guy's got to be fired. They got to get rid of him tomorrow. You got to clear this slate now and start rebuilding for next year. I mean, and it was all right there. And now he's like, well, I've always, Yo's a great coach, and he kind of has kind of treaded back on it. And I know he's not here to defend himself, but
I have the recording of Tony saying Yo should be fired.
Fletcher.
Yeah, I think he could call for Fletcher's job too, which I think is absolutely asinine.
No, he's done a great job.
Back to my point, though. Is Yo the guy that
I don't know.
will or can lead the Wild to the promised land, or do you need a more veteran coach to come in and take over what Yo's built up? He's done a good job getting it. Fletcher's done a good job getting it to this point.
Who do you get? Because do you risk? I mean, you're right. If you're not getting anywhere past the second round, I guess what does it hurt? I mean, you have a great core of people. Now you're going to have a capable goaltender that'll keep you in games, make the saves he should be making. Who are you going to get to bring him to the next level? I'm not sure, because would you potentially lose the veterans? And is that even I guess maybe you need to bring a different voice and not have somebody who's going to foster and coddle them, because clearly we talked about the power play. There's no reason that those people should all be on the first power play. I mean, absolutely not. I mean, you should sprinkle in the likes of a Scandella, a Spurgeon, a Dumba on the point.
Yep.
There's no reason that Suter nor Pominville should be on that point. Neither of them have, a shot worth anything compared to those other 3 at all.
If these guys get anywhere, it's going to be on the backs of the youth, not of the veterans. The youth is going to carry this Wild club to the promised land if they get there. So
and so that's, I guess, back to the point about Yo. I mean, Yo, the reason I think they brought him up is because he did so well with the Iowa Wild and had that buy-in, and then came up and was able to kind of bring them up, have them buy into the system, have them play the right way, and have them continue that way. The problem that, someone Heatley was always talked about being a great locker room guy, but he didn't buy into the system, and I think that was an issue. I mean, with Yo being a 38, 39-year-old, 40-year-old guy, I mean, and you got somebody who's, Cook is 36, I don't know how that works. I mean, do you look at the guy who's telling you how to play the game and how to do everything, and you're like 6 months older than me. What are you talking about?
Well, and to Yo's credit, too, he was very hesitant on bringing Vanek into the fold. He didn't want Vanek, from what I heard, reported on radio and newspaper, that he wasn't a big fan of the move.
That was predetermined. I mean, that was probably done deal before the season was even over.
Said he wanted to come here.
It's like when they announced Parise and Suter were both going to sign with the Wild. It's about the same amount of time.
Wow.
But I don't know. Jury for me is still out on Yo. He's gotten them in with their backs against the wall numerous times. He's got good rapport with the team. I mean, when they show Yo talking to Suter, and it's Yo's job on the line, and he's cool as a cucumber. But man, I wonder what they need to do to get over the hump, because Chicago, it's going to be Chicago year in and year out, whether it's round 1, round 2, round 3. Well, it won't be round 3, but rounds 1 and 2. It's Chicago, 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 Chicago. And I do believe, even with, the departures that they're going to have of a significant degree, that Chicago will be back in it for a long time to come.
Well, I mean, they're built, you're right, they have the core pieces, and they can kind of sprinkle in some talent around them, and you're going to have the pieces that you need. I mean, similar to that of what we had, with the Parisi and the Suter, and then you pick up the Pominville on the longer contract. Now you get the younger guys on the contracts, and that's kind of how you have to work in a cap environment. I mean, you have to be able to have your veteran talent, and then you have to be able to supplement that with some other people that are making as much money. But I think next year is going to be a real telling year, considering you're going to start the year with a capable goaltender, if he stays. I mean, I would be absolutely shocked if he leaves.
I would too. I hope it doesn't.
I think the fan base would go absolutely just sideways if he walks.
Right.
So I don't think that Fletcher's letting that happen.
You would go sideways, because that really. Dudek saved his job to some extent. I mean, after the All-Star game, they brought him on.
The whole organization. Think of if they would have continued to go down the rabbit hole that they were. I mean, they could have all likely been in on like the Connor McDavid sweepstakes. I mean, it could have been that way. I mean, you're going down that fast. I mean, you got that anchor tied to your ankles, and nobody wants to play. I mean, they were basically, they're not going to say they're mailing it in. But as a player, and you know that you're not going to go anywhere, it's probably tough to give it your all.
Oh, yeah.
Remember that NBC game at the midpoint of the season where Roenick is calling for Yo's job? And Milbury chimes in and says, or go out and get a capable goalie.
Right.
I mean, that's where we were at. If Fletcher went out and got a goalie that wasn't capable, and they kept going down and missed the playoffs, I mean, I don't think Fletcher would have fired him, but maybe Leopold would have.
Oh, Fletcher, and Fletcher's not going anywhere. He's done more for the franchise in picking up the pieces that Riseborough left behind as he was like, shoot out of town because, of what he dismantled our franchise. But I don't know. I mean, if they didn't turn it around, I mean, does Yo get canned? I mean, considering it is goaltender, I don't think so, considering you plug and play a guy that's capable and everything turns around.
Yeah.
I mean, and I said that earlier this year. But what you have to find out is at the start of the year, if you have the pieces to have a good, talented franchise, and you can see what happens throughout the year, that's going to be the test. If you can sustain and have good success and have a season where you're not challenging for the wild card, where you're in that Central Division hunt for either the division title or the second, third place. I mean, that's where I see them next year. It's not going to be wild card discussion. It's going to be where are they going to land in the Central to finish the season.
Well, I thought they were going to do that this year. After last year's playoffs, I was like, great, we're going to be right up there. We start with home ice advantage. That's what this team needs. You got to get that crowd.
They took the tagline from you.
Right.
I mean, they basically came out with that on the towel the first game of the season, home of the home ice advantage.
Right.
And that was a curse all season long.
Yeah.
We were the Road Warriors this year. It was the first season ever.
Thank God.
And it is something that shows, like, you think you have all the pieces put together, and you come into the next season, you add Vanek, so you think you're going to kind of bolster your scoring. But then look what happens. It all goes back to, they didn't fix the uncertainty of the goaltender. Granted, because they had, their hand was forced because of incidents that took place. But then Kemper completely, just falls apart. And then where you're going to go to the old guy that shouldn't have even got the contract he got. Right. I mean, he's one groin injury away from, or whatever, the abdominal or whatever he had fixed last year. But he's one that you can't rely on and can't build on, and he's one that is so. I mean, he has that European way about him where he's just like, hey, the guys, they play for me, and I mean, he has barely a pulse. Nobody can talk to him because he does his turtle trot around the.
Right. Do you think that they're going to just cut him?
Oh, they're buying him out.
Yeah.
I'll put
Do they
money
have just
on it.
one buyout? Is that all you get?
No, you can buy out whoever you want, but you have to pay. Like think
the
of
whole
like
thing.
a Mark Parrish thing.
Right.
Like they bought out Mark Parrish.
Yeah, he got
right
paid
after,
for like 4 years.
Right after Riseborough signed him, and they had to pay it for like 4 or 5 years.
Right.
He was making like $1 million a year, just like playing for another team.
Right.
But you can buy him out, and I think you could maybe even amortize it over 2 years. He only has 1 year left on his deal. I think it's like $3.2 million. So I think you amortize over $1.5 million. I think it might $1.4 million would come out to be each year, which is not a lot of money.
Right.
You're not going to have anything left over with Harding. He's off contract. Brodziak's off contract. You got a few underling guys that are in the minors that are fringe players. They're going to be gone. You got a Prosser that you have to determine what you're going to do as far as depth guy. I don't think he's going to be back, considering I think Leopold will sign for a low amount of money because he wants to stay here, and he'll be your depth defenseman. So I mean, looking at the depth chart, I think you're going to have Leopold on your 6D, and then probably Dumba. I think Folan will be in the mix, and so I think you're going to have that kind of a dynamic. And then you can leave the other guys down in, like Olsen, I think, can sit down in the minors and just develop and play. And then you have to determine, I guess, what you're going to do with that fourth line center. Maybe you bring back Carter. Maybe you don't. I mean, I don't see them bringing back Brodziak, especially considering they're not going to get him out of 1 year at low cost.
Is he done in his contract this year?
Yeah, Brodziak's over. So
were you surprised that Prosser didn't come in for Leopold in this last game?
No, because, I mean, Leopold, he was not a standout, glaring, defenseman that was causing issues. I didn't think. I mean, he wasn't playing phenomenal, but he was playing good enough for a third-line defenseman.
Right.
Plus, I don't think Chicago brings the cheap game in front of the goal and types of antics.
Right.
He'll stand up. He's a tough guy. Neil Sheehy, a friend of mine, NHL agent, he said that the Wild would never win the Stanley Cup with Jared Spurgeon on, playing regular defensive minutes, and that a guy like his guy Prosser, should be the guy instead. And of course, he's just lobbying for his guy,
Well,
his
yeah.
contract and whatnot.
It's all posturing.
But I thought it was interesting because he understands the game well enough. But is that the old school philosophy now, where you need the tough guys back on D, that you need the big men? Because Spurgeon has fared well. Very well.
He's played great.
He's the same kind of body style. I mean, not as thick as Dumba, but he's small and he's got the low center of gravity. So hits-wise, if you look statistically, he has more hits than just about any other defenseman we have, because he will throw the body around. He doesn't hit hard, but he hits effective. And he doesn't hit where he's going to take himself out of plays, but he's a good, sound defenseman. He's mobile. He can get into the offensive play. When they're in the offensive zone, he can cheat up and kind of be that, that almost like fourth forward where he gets in and can chip pucks and tip pucks in. That's the kind of person that you need, I think, in this NHL, is have that dynamic on your defensive core. Like a Scandella does that too, and a Dumba does that. You need your stay-at-homes, but you need your defensemen that you can trust enough that they can release and they can get up into the play, and somebody else will take their spot.
Right.
I mean, that is what I think that the recipe. Now, he's one that people have speculated could be one that they would move, because Dumba does have similar traits, and that he's going to be coming up for a contract. So I don't know what they do with Spurgeon.
Well, one of the nice things about the Wild not faring well in this round of the playoffs, it kind of drives down the value a little bit, or at least doesn't increase it. So Dubnyk, isn't the goalie that we all thought he was. He's kind of like Hammond up in Ottawa, where he was great during the regular season, then playoffs, here and there. But at least his value doesn't skyrocket. He's the number one UFA on a recent website that I went to right now. But maybe the Wild can say, hey, great run during the regular season, playoffs, maybe we need some more work, but maybe they get him for a more reasonable value. Kind of like Stewart. If you want to keep Stewart, kind of dropped off, at the end here in the Chicago series. So maybe that either inhibits another team's willingness to take a chance on him, or it gets a good value for the Wild.
It's kind of a trickle-down effect, because you have to start with Dubnyk before you do anything else.
Right.
You have to start with Dubnyk before you have any money to do anything else. And once that happens, you have some decisions to make. Now, one of them is restricted free agent Granlund. So regular season, it's kind of the opposite of what you just said. Regular season, his stock was a little lower. Maybe he was looking for a bridge deal or something where he wanted to get paid eventually. But now he's kind of showed back up in the playoffs, and he's played well. So, does his stock kind of go up a little bit, to help out, get a little more money for that 2-year bridge deal to see before he gets his bigger contract? It all depends on how the negotiations go. He's not going regardless, but I'm not sure how they view him, where everybody speculated on, is he really the center for that line with Parisi and Pominville.
Honestly, I like the shorter-term deals because they're playing for their money, game in and game out. You get these long-term deals. I mean, remember when Brent Burns signed his long-term deal, and then he went away, he melted away, he didn't show up forever. And they were saying, well, it kind of gets in your head sometimes, and you feel like you have to do more to earn your money. Shanahan, didn't he used to play on just a one-year deal with the Red Wings, just 1 year, and he had to keep proving himself, and by God, he did.
Yeah. It's kind of what Jágr's doing. I mean, Jágr just kind of bounces from 1 year to. I think he might have just signed a 2-year with Florida. I think in the offseason he did sign a 2-year, but
I think he did.
But he, he's the exception to the rule, obviously. But I mean, he did that. Kind of bounced around from team to team. On 1-year deals to try to determine where's my best chance. So that does happen. But you're right. The shorter-term deals are more risky, and I think the players sometimes take less money for more security long-term.
And I don't think Fletcher's opposed to it. I think he's like, great, prove yourself. Prove yourself and we'll pay you the money because they need him to be that number one center. They need him to be.
And especially after they just divvied out contracts to, Niederreiter got a 3-year, but, Coyle with the longer deal, Scandella with the longer deal. All these guys with longer deals, Parisi, Suter, those guys, Pominville has a longer deal. I mean, so you have to kind of have that, the staggering effect, so you don't have too many people up for contract at any given time because that could affect things.
And I was just looking at a site like CapGeek, but it's on Hockey Buzz, and that's what it looked like. It looked like Fletcher had set up a perfect stair, in terms of deal expires for one guy, then the next year for the next guy, and then the next year for the next guy, except for Parisi and Suter. They go until I die, I think.
Right.
What is it? That's what they do. I mean, 10-year deals or something, 13 year deals. That's longer, and they have to. I think they have to play it out because otherwise you get fined. I mean, there's some sort of cap penalty involved if you do not play through your contract.
I'm not sure there is. I think they got the deal in before that went into effect.
Okay.
So they were able to front load the contract, and so by year 7 they might be able to, start looking at moving them if they want to be moved.
A Kovalchuk kind of a deal where they had that absolutely albatross of a contract, and then for some reason the NHL just kind of turned a blind eye when he left and threatened that first round pick and then said, oh, okay, you can have it back. I mean, and kind of played nice. I mean, it's funny how the NHL can kind of just do what they want, whatever's popular at the time.
He's trying to make his way back now.
Yeah, well, of course. He's over in Mother Russia, and he's probably like, what was I thinking?
I think he comes back unrestricted free agent. He gets to choose his team when he comes back. I don't think the Devils hold his rights anymore.
They should make him go back.
Well, he should get a draft pick or something.
I mean, they should make him. They should make him go back and say, no, you have to go back, and then let them trade him if they want. I mean, if the contract is null and void now, make him go back, and at least they have his rights. So either he signs with them or they trade him, and then they figure it out. I just was handed an urgent news story.
Oh, my God.
Here we go. It's Bennett's Happy Hour, which I was going to actually piggyback off my staggering effect earlier. Coors Light gives you the staggering effect if you have one too many, and then you can call up Blue and White, and they'll bring you on home. But 250 Coors Lights in all domestic bottles from 3 to 6 at Bennett's, 250 Rails, 350 Calls, 450 Cosmos, and $5 sliders and martinis.
450 Cosmos and martinis.
And the martinis are up on the board in front of me. And honest to God, I feel like I'm at an ice cream.
There's over 30 of them.
I'm at an ice cream shop because I'm seeing things like red velvet cake and vanilla sky and truffalini and mint chip cake. That sounds good. So come on in and enjoy Happy Hour from 3 to 6. I did see on the board up there, voted number 1 Happy Hour in 7th.
It is.
All right.
For 9 years running.
There we go. I like it.
On the other side of that board, we got all the shots, too. We got like 40 different shots that you can come down for late night or anytime. Doesn't matter. Now shots seem like a regular cocktail. You know what I mean?
Have it with your orange juice.
Yeah.
Kind of like the espresso.
Yeah.
Totally.
You could probably have a shot of Bailey's in your coffee.
Have you watched any of the Anaheim-Calgary?
I was honestly shocked. I pulled up the scores of the other series, and I was shocked that they won in overtime. Obviously, I didn't watch it, last night, but
I saw it.
They won in overtime.
Oh. Well, I didn't see the overtime goal. I always fall asleep during the intermission, but I was just kind of waiting the game out, and I saw that Goudreau goal, 20 seconds remaining.
Johnny Hockey.
Just picked his spot.
Is that kid unbelievable?
What round was he drafted in, like late round?
I don't even know.
He's one that was, a kind of a sleeper pick that just nobody probably knew about, and he showed up and was like, I mean, here I am.
Wow.
I mean, you see those here and there. I mean, like I'm biased. I'm a Spurgeon fan, but Spurgeon is one of those kind of guys that he was a late draft pick by the Islanders, showed up to camp. We don't have really interested in you. Wild say, come on over and try out at our camp. Then we sign him. I mean, that's the kind of guy that like goes under the radar and turns out to be a great pick, a pickup by somebody. And you don't see it that often. Well, you do see it. I mean, that kid is special.
Well, you got to figure with a nickname Johnny Hockey that he's going to be good, right?
Yeah.
But to play in his first year out of college and then to light it up the way he has.
Wow.
It's even better than the original Johnny Football, who in all indications look like he's not even going to be with with the Browns next year.
Well, and then Calgary has that other guy Bennett,
Sam Bennett, unbelievable player.
And they just played him in last night's game and then burned a year on his contract for doing that.
Yeah.
And so on satellite radio on that NHL channel, they were kind of ripping the Flames for doing that. I wouldn't do it. They're going to have an expensive team. But, man, you got to try to win. You got to pull out all the stops. And speaking of pulling out all the stops, I hope we see that tomorrow.
Well, doesn't that set up your future for those guys?
I don't think we have anybody we can do that with, though.
No.
I don't think we have that
nice.
that black ace, as they call him. I don't think you're going to bring him into the game.
What do you think they need to do tomorrow to get a win?
Score.
I mean, I would think. I don't want to sound like the locker room soundbite, but I mean, you have to go back to playing the game that you play. I mean, you have to play fundamental, sound, good, solid hockey. I mean, you can't be chasing them. You can't be trying to play. Play the game that you played against the Blues. Play the game that you played at the tail end of the season when you beat Chicago twice in the tail end of the season, and you went on that road run for how long, and you were so defensively sound that Dubnyk was only facing shots in the teens for games at a time, and that's the kind of game that you need to play, and that's where Dubnyk looks good. That's where he looks good when he doesn't have to stop crazy shots. He stops shots from the outside, the perimeter, no deflections. They keep the front clean. He sees all the shots. I mean, that is where he's making the saves he's supposed to.
I think this time of year it's coaching. Why? Because they don't have the CBA governing how often you cannot practice.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, you can do video, you can do on ice, you can do off ice, whatever you want to do. There's no more rules governing it. And I thought last year Yo did a great job. I think he finally had time to coach his guys. And in that Avalanche series, he brought them back. I mean, he talked about being raised from the dead. It was interesting. I was in Chicago for games 1 and 2. We fly back on Spirit Airlines, and our pilots, our captain of the airplane was Lazarus. And I tweeted a buddy, and I tweeted my wife, bad omen. I don't want to go down and have to be raised back from the dead, but guess what? My team has to.
Right.
And it comes down to coaching. And I think, Joe, you asked earlier whether or not Yo was being outcoached by Quenneville. Currently, I think he is. I don't know what he's got up his sleeve or what he's going to try different or how he's going to motivate these guys to play his game, like you say, Scott. But he's got to do something.
And I think that what you saw when he was in with the Arrows at the time, when he was down there and they were going on their Calder Cup run, you saw a much fiery brand of Mike Yo than you see now. You saw him getting the guys fired up and really going irate from the bench and bringing them back, in a timeout, and just he was red-faced and he was like getting them, getting them jacked up and like, you got to he was motivating them. Where now, I don't know what it is if he doesn't feel that he can do that with the guys that are making $8-9 million a year and are veterans and are, all-stars and everything else. Is he just have that fear of kind of going after those in fear of losing losing the people that have his back and that have had his back all the times that they've kind of gone down, into the cellar. And I don't know if it's a mental thing, and hockey and sports in general are so mental. I'm convinced that they were mentally defeated before this even started.
Well, they say in Vancouver, Tortorella just lost the room because that was his style.
Yeah.
He would light people up like a Christmas tree in the locker room. And when Yo tried to do that this year, that one time that we saw where that widely publicized video when he was on the ice, that was so forced it wasn't even funny. That was made for TV.
Well, and they say that, there's no, you're talking about the NHL Network, you hear them talking about there's no privacy anymore. They used to be able to have practices and everything else where it was just them, and now it's media and it's, the beat writers, and everybody has access and so much access, and in the locker room and everything, that nothing's private. And whether or not that was orchestrated or not, he had kind of a minor meltdown. I think it was in Arizona or something previous to that, where he kind of screamed at the guys a little bit. But in order to buy in, you have to respect the words that are coming out of the mouth. And if you're saying that he's our guy. You know, we don't want him to go anywhere. You think you have the respect of listening if he did give you direction, and if he did change things up. But maybe it's one of the things where other people or the younger people don't respect that he's not changing things out like the power play.
Well, he's got too much undue deference to the veterans, I think. You know, it's veterans. I mean, these kids have to be put into situations where they're going to learn. You know, we're down 3-0. I mean, probably not going to win the series. Get those kids going on the first power play unit.
Yeah. And last week we had Lou Nanne, and he recorded an interview for us, and I asked him that directly. I go, what do you think of the power play? And he said, I don't want to take anything away from the coach. He goes, but if it was me, I would put Dumba, Spurgeon, Scandella on that first power play because they shoot and they hit the net. And they're shooting hard, and they're gonna if they're not gonna go in, it's gonna get rebounds. It's something else. He goes, the other two guys, they're not playing the point well, and all they're doing is cycling the puck. He goes, it just isn't effective. So when you got somebody who is as revered as Lou Nanne is,
hockey
saying
royalty.
that, hockey immortality, telling you what you should do. I mean, maybe just pick the guy's brain once in a while. Say, hey Lou, what do you think? Should we maybe mix this up? I mean, it doesn't have to be publicized, but it just, give me a tidbit of what you think we should do. And I said it should be a mixture of the veterans and the younger guys on both power plays. You don't have a first and second power play. You have equally talented power plays that have a nice variety of attributes. Where you do have some sound presence and some veteran presence, and you have some guys that like to move their feet and cycle the puck and you're not afraid to fire it, before the crowd yells shoot and everything. I mean,
and you're harder to coach against because if you don't have a power play 1, a power play 2, they don't know who you're going to throw out there.
I could coach against that power play 1. I mean, I could tell you exactly what they do. They don't move their feet, and all you have to do is clog up lanes. I mean, the passing lanes are so predictable. That's why the pucks are intercepted and tipped, and then it goes out of the zone. You got to regroup, get it back in. You're doing the dump and chase thing to get back into the zone, and then they get it, they clear it down, and before you know it, a minute 20 is done.
It's almost like the ghost of Pierre-Marc Bouchard. Remember on the power play when he would just go and he would skate around the perimeter
ghost.
The whole time?
I just got the signal we got to go to break, so we'll be back after this.
That's good because I have to go to the bathroom.
You're not the only one.
Apparently we're having some technical difficulties, so we are back. Little premature, but I guess in honor of Jeff, that's what we're going to do. That was a dirty Jeff joke for those of you who didn't pick that up. So I guess we will continue on our dissection of what has been this series, and we kind of touched on what we need to do here in Game 4. And Brad, do you think that Chicago maybe is going to take it easy on us tomorrow night in hopes that they want to take the W at Game 5?
Well, I think they have an opportunity to rest some players. I don't think they feel the need to sweep. I think they believe that even if they drop Game 4, that they're just going to go back to the United Center where they're perfect and they're just going to win. They're going to mop up at home.
Can you imagine though? And I don't want to be like the the uber ridiculous positive person here, but you imagine what would it feel like if you were the Wild and the other team in the playoffs are resting players? Wouldn't that be like almost billboard material for you to say like, oh hell no, like you're now rested that you don't think we're good, and like that almost would be a motivator for me to say, I mean, I want to take it to you with every ounce of my being to see as many games as this can go. I mean, that might be like a turnaround factor. So I don't think they're going to risk it. I think they're going to want to close it out tomorrow night.
Yeah, you're probably right, but it's just one of those theories that you see floated on social media from time to time, and so you run with it a little bit, see where it gets you.
It's always fun to win at home. I mean, we just won our first series at home, a couple weeks ago, and it is nice to be able to win in front of your home crowd and not celebrate while the opposing team's fans are walking out of the rink with their heads hung. I mean, the ones that I guess are still there.
And I think the Blackhawks make enough money where it doesn't matter where they finish in the postseason. They're turning profits, unlike most teams where they have to get at least to the third round to see a profit. So it's one of those things where, those fans sell out every game, during the regular season, not to mention postseason. When I went there, I was paying on average $200 per seat in the upper deck. I mean, just ridiculously priced seats. At the X, if you paid $200, you'd be sitting in the lower bowl with a fairly decent seat from a scalper.
Not in the first round. First round, they were I think the average price of the lower side tickets were in excess of $400.
Yeah, and
that was the first round. I mean, that was the prices have dropped drastically to in this second round, which is surprising to me. But it has it's almost like people have given up hope and they don't want to watch a team lose.
Well, I've heard or I've seen on social media that the ticket prices for tomorrow night's game are dramatically reduced. It's almost like a lot of the season ticket holders have given up on the big club.
And that's amazing because you think if anything else, it's possibly the last time you're going to be able to see the squad. I mean, of course, nobody wants to pay to see a loss, but we got Joe. Joe is adding one last parting thought.
Just one more mention, if you don't mind. Our golf league is coming up on starting next week. We play at Highland 9. If anybody would like to sign up, give us a call down here. It's a 9-hole league, 2-man teams. We have a lot of fun. Come back here, 2-for-1s after. Just a great time.
What's the phone number?
651-228-1408.
Excellent. Yeah,
thanks,
it's that's almost like an
omen.
An indicator, an omen. Yeah, it's like we have golf starting now, right as we're talking about the twilight of our favorite squad season, which is kind of has a little bit of tone of irony to it. But let's hope that's not the case, and let's hope they can maybe right the ship and get things going tomorrow night. I mean, I'd love to see them come back and at least put up a good showing, like a bounce back game. Obviously, we didn't do that in Game 2, and maybe we do that in Game 4 and kind of revitalize some confidence. And if we end up losing in Game 5, whatever game, I mean, at least it's going to stretch it out a little bit. So you're not being shown the door on a 4-game sweep. I mean, I don't think that's going to leave anybody happy with the fact that last year we pushed it to Game 6.
Well, and we left the XL Energy Center with a loss under our belt. It's not as much fun leaving under a loss as it is with a win. So, I mean, for the franchise and the fans, it would be good to leave St. Paul tomorrow with a W under our belt. I think Chicago, they want the win, but they want to get out with the win without injuring any of their key players.
That's a good point, and I would say as long as it doesn't have we don't have like Stanchion 2.0 like last year. I think I think that was in my end, and I watched it. I watched it happen, and I was absolutely just. I had to stand there about 5 minutes of just disbelief that just happened.
Well, if you remember Game 1 this year in Chicago, the very first shot on net, it was a wraparound on the glass, and it hit a stanchion and popped out front, and I was like, not again, really?
Yeah, and the stanchions are obviously a safety thing, but we talked about the seamless glass on how great it was. When you're sitting down, you can see everything clear, and the agitator fans would like get in there and get their mouth right by it and try to talk some trash to the players. But with the new glass, they do have it flexes more, but it also does give you those kind of wonky bounces that can come back to haunt you. I'm getting the signal that we might be ready for a break, so let's try this take 2.
Thought the Twins' winning streak was going to keep going. Thought that was a given. Was hoping the movie that I screened last night, Sofia Vergara, Reese Witherspoon, was going to be a fun, good movie. None of those things happened last night.
None on all accounts, huh?
The Wild lost, the Twins lost, and the movie sucked.
Oh, man. Don't tell Lois that. She was really looking forward to that movie.
I guess it wasn't the worst movie I've ever seen. Hot Pursuit. But boy, no, it's not a good movie and not a good night for sports, Minnesota sports fans.
Well, why don't you just tell us who you are and what you do here, Rusty?
It's Rusty Gatenby. I've got a couple of digital radio shows at the Alive and Social Network, which if you haven't listened to by now, what the hell is your problem? The Twin Cities Hit Show
Twin Cities Hit Show. They're up at the fishing opener.
We're heading up to the fishing opener, the Governor's Fishing Opener up there at Lake Vermilion. We'll be broadcasting live Friday from 8 in the morning until 10. We got a whole bevy of celebrities and politicians lined up.
Perfect.
So that'll be good. And then I have the Rusty Gatenby Review, which we focus on entertainment. We give our opinions and go out there and talk to the actors and the directors and give you the heads up on what movies to not see and what you should absolutely be going to. And also musicals and music and Broadway. And by the way, I have my Rolling Stones tickets. So.
I know, I don't have them yet. We're becoming very good friends, so hopefully I can get in with you. But we got you here on Wild Wednesdays here. Why don't you just give us a 2-minute take on what you think of the series? We're down 3-0. Are we going to come back and win this series?
Part of me just thinks it's completely a head game. It's a mental game. I heard the other day that in the warm-ups, the Blackhawks were all loosey-goosey and having fun, and the Wild were just dead serious about it.
Just a bag skate, just skating blue line to blue line here. Herb Brooks again.
Yeah, and it's like, oh, you guys have already lost before you've started.
Yeah.
And now it's going to, I mean, it ain't over till it's over. They got to win tonight, right? But part of me is like, well, if we're not going to the Stanley Cup, let's just get it over with.
Yeah, well, we want to keep it going here. We love being here at Bennett's. I came down to Bennett's last night. I had to pick up my computer, which I left there. And
as you know, though, there's hockey year-round here in Minnesota. You guys could do it all summer long, you know?
Yeah,
Changes are made. Kids are still skating in camps.
Yep, exactly. And we will forward that to Mr. Joe Bennett.
He loves you, right? He loves us.
He loves the show here. So,
yeah.
All right, perfect.
Go
perfect,
Wild.
Rusty. Yeah, let's do this.
If they're going to win tonight, damn it, win the whole thing.
Win the whole thing. Let's do this.
And we are back here at Bennett's Shop and Rail House. We're to wrap up the show. A couple more things, but and then we're gonna do a quick giveaway. So I think we've kind of belabored the points of tomorrow night, but I think. I'm thinking that that we can probably come back, and I don't think the players want to go out that way either. I mean, I don't think, especially on the home ice, I'm not sure how much it really matters. I know that's a lot of talk, but I think the players don't want to get kind of skate off the ice for the end of the season, with a loss at their home arena
or getting swept. I mean, it's embarrassing, I think, for the players to get swept. It doesn't matter if it's a world beater like the Blackhawks, and if the Blackhawks do win this round, which most likely they will, it'll be interesting to see how they match up if Anaheim comes out of their Pacific Division.
It is. I mean, it is one of the things where before the playoffs started, I always looked and said that, I think the biggest challenge for us would have been, and I based it off of how we ended the season. I based it how we match up against the likes of Nashville, Chicago, and St. Louis. I mean, I thought we played a dominant game over all three of them. The one that I was worried about was Winnipeg, and they handled Winnipeg with ease. I mean, they 4-0 out of it, and then really didn't take them a couple overtimes, but I mean, at no time did they look like that they were at risk to lose that series.
And I was surprised at the fact that Nashville gave Chicago fits, whereas the Wild aren't seeming to do that, and I'm just wondering why that is. Because
I think exactly that we are not playing the way we can play, and they've just played down to how they think that they should perform against a team that has taken them out the past couple of years. And I don't know if that's a reality or if that's just my perception, but the way that they played at the end of the season and against the Blues, there's no way that Chicago should be overmatching us this much.
Well, let's not forget the fact that the Wild really had to be playing playoff hockey since after the All-Star game, and so they're going on months, whereas the Chicago Blackhawks, they're just kind of winning, losing, losing, and are probably are better rested at this point, in the playoff journey.
There is a burnout factor, and everybody kind of wondered if the shoe was going to drop during the season, and if they could, the magical run was going to eventually come to a close. But we did make it into the playoffs, and we didn't have to back our way in. We did win into it, and we won the first wild card. And it's funny that if we would have won, and I don't want to open up a whole can of worms at the end of the show here, but if we would have won that last game in St. Louis, Chicago lost to Colorado. So we would have played Nashville, and Chicago would have played St. Louis.
But they waited until we lost
Before they
took out Taves and Hossa out of the lineup.
Okay.
They were going to play.
So I mean, and it's I think did they beat them by 1 goal? I think, and it wasn't I don't think it was a dominant win by Colorado, but that was one thing I always saw. I'm like, the what ifs, you can never kind of sit and like dwell on them, but like, well, what if we would have matched up against Nashville, and then Chicago and St. Louis would have just battled each other out and worn each other out, and then we would have got maybe St. Louis or who knows who at that point.
Well, I think Chicago would have dispatched with St. Louis, maybe the same as they're doing with us currently.
Yeah,
but I said it before the playoffs started. I have to repeat it at the end. As a season ticket holder, I am very pleased with this season. Win or lose tomorrow, win or lose this series, because of what they did after the All-Star break. Everybody was so in the dumps at the midpoint of the season, and for them to turn it around and get into the playoffs, for me, that was winning round 1. Beating St. Louis, for me, was round 2. So it almost feels like we're in the Western Conference Finals against Chicago right now.
I agree, and I think, as a fellow season ticket holder, I was pleased the way that they did have, they were tenacious. They seemed like a very complete team, and the experts around the NHL, were basically saying that they were the most complete team after the All-Star break, and a lot of recognition, a lot of accolades, and really people taking notice of a squad otherwise it was pretty much a flyover.
And it's one thing to be a complete team during the regular season, like St. Louis, like Minnesota in the second half of the season. It's another thing to be a Stanley Cup contender, and that's what the Wild have to build to now.
Agreed. Well, without further ado, we're going to announce the winner of our jersey giveaway. So congratulations!
Thank you very much.
It is a smaller jersey, so it's very fitting that you won it.
Yeah, it's nice. We have a female here to give the jersey away. We're going to give away assistant captain's jersey, a home jersey, to the lovely lady who works at Bez.
Alternate captain.
Alternate, excuse me. I'm not the Wild expert, but the lovely lady who works here at Bennett's, who takes good care of us here every Wednesday night. So here's your jersey, and congratulations.
Thank you so much. I'm going to wear this to work at Bennett's tomorrow night, and hopefully it'll bring us some luck for the game.
Let's hope so.
Yeah, exactly. How long have you worked at Bennett's?
Almost 5 years.
Oh, 5 years. Wow,
Yeah.
Joe, take good care of you? He pay you enough?
Of course.
We should hit him up for a raise.
Yes.
All the time, or just maybe the patrons to make sure they take care of you.
Thank you so much, guys.
All right. Well, that's going to do it for us here on another Wild Wednesday. We will see you back here next week, and let's hope that we have some positivity to tell.
Go Wild.
And thanks again, Brad, for being our fill-in guest. We really appreciate it.
Thanks for having us.